Okay, so I'll go ahead and get started on maintenance done right. So first I want to discuss basically getting everybody on to the same page with maintenance, all the way from owners, all the way through your tenants and your staff members. So the first thing would be to set tenant expectations. This is so important when it relates to maintenance, because what they are expecting when they move into a property, you can lay all this out when they sign the lease, when they move in, so that way you're not running into any issues down the line when you have to communicate things, whether it's bad news or good news. So going through everything for the tenant expectation happens at the lease signing, and then in there it states what the tenant is responsible for when it comes to gutters, lawn care, snow removal. Now those things aren't directly maintenance when I think of maintenance, but they are costs that go towards maintenance. The other thing is Matt has put together a maintenance video that we show during lease signings. And in that video, it shows tenants if they need to change their furnace filter, how to do that, how to make sure that they're keeping certain areas neat and tidy to ensure that there aren't maintenance issues, keeping weeds from around your outside AC unit, making sure that your faucets aren't leaking, making sure that they know where the furnace filter is at, making sure that they know how to change the batteries, the breaker box, and some more information. The information isn't extremely detailed. We don't want tenants to be fixing their own maintenance issues, but it just lets them know where they can find those things to at least check them to find out if that is the root of the problem that they may be experiencing before they contact to submit for a work order. So that's very important. Now, for us, we manage multifamily and we also manage single family homes. So we have a little bit of a difference in what is maintenance tenant responsibility and what is it that we will provide. So in a single family home, items like pest control, if they have a bug issue or a rodent problem, those things in a single family home will fall under tenant responsibility. When it comes to things like gutters, that's also a tenant responsibility, exterior, snow removal, lawn care, major weeds, vegetation removal, that would be a tenant responsibility as well. Now we're going to get into things like tree removal, those more expensive items, more risky repairs. That's something that that would be an owner approval or on us to make the repair. In a multifamily home, we cover things like pest control. And if you think about it, the items that could cause long-term damage if one of the tenants does not make the repair. Pest control, it's really difficult if one tenant is experiencing, for example, bed bugs or roaches. That tenant just treats their unit. Now they've gone to the next unit and that tenant may not treat for them. So you just continue to have a consistent problem unless you just treat the property as a whole. So that's something that we would typically handle in a multifamily home. So it's items like that, just identifying and setting that expectation up front for who's responsible for what as far as maintenance goes, letting tenants know that if they have any issues with their HVAC units, that they check the batteries and the thermostat, they check the furnace filters, and if those items aren't kept up or addressed, then they could be billed back. Plumbing calls, if we go for a clogged toilet and anything is found in the line other than tree roots, the tenant will be billed back. It could be wipes, it could be their child threw a toy in the toilet, it could be sanitary products, anything like that, a tenant will be billed back for. Letting them know up front that could happen or will happen helps cut down on the amount of work orders that we may receive for those items. The next area is documentation. This is also very, very important, just as important as setting the expectation with the tenant. This helps ensure especially when you're managing such a large volume of properties. Sometimes it's difficult to check 5 different places for one piece of information if you can document it clearly where the person that's handling maintenance can see that information. So we're currently operating off of AppFolio for our property management software. And in there, it leaves a space for maintenance notes, property notes, and information like that. It makes it, it puts all that information in one place so the person that's receiving and entering work orders can find that information easily. So that information that we include in the maintenance notes would include warranty information. Is the property under warranty? Is it, maybe we treated for termites at the beginning and that's under that warranty. The other warranty information is if the major mechanicals were warranted. So the furnace that may have warranty information or parts that are warranted, we would include that information along with the dates in the maintenance notes. This just helps the person that's scheduling and taking the calls for maintenance know where they need to go as a first stop to get something repaired versus taking a while to try to figure out who to go to, who to troubleshoot. It just keeps it all in one place. The next thing that we include in the documentation is the project information. So we want to know in there, has the property recently undergone, recently had a turnover or rehab done on it? If it has, we want to make sure we're sending that property back to whoever finished the project to make those repairs, especially if it's something that should have been included in the scope of work during rehab or during the turnover in between tenants. So that information is very important. And then the final thing that we like to include in the documentation is the very, very important major past work order information. For example, if a property has continuous issues with drains backing up or continuous issues with the basement flooding or sewage coming up, or a recurring issue with their AC unit, something along those lines, we want to document those major issues. It's important to document those because you may look at it differently as a coordinator or a scheduler of maintenance. If a property has received a plumbing call for their drain backing up, we could send one of our in-house maintenance technicians to go and take a look and potentially make the repair. But if this is the 3rd time that this drain is backed up, it may be a deeper issue and we're just sending somebody out to take a look, make the same repair, and it's only a temporary repair. This causes extra expenses on the owner for this temporary repair, and it also causes frustrations on the tenant's part. I mean, if you're a tenant and your toilet continuously or your bathtub keeps backing up and you're having issues with it, that's now starting to affect your living arrangements. You're going to be very frustrated. So it's just easier if you document everything clearly, especially if it's a recurring issue. You can then make a better decision on who to dispatch to take care of that or rectify that issue. So those are just super important things that we try to do just to kind of alleviate the moving parts. I mean, there's always going to be moving parts with owners as far as tenants and owners, property owners, and what the right and wrong thing to do is. But tenant expectations and the documentation part just definitely help. So it's not as difficult to try to track all of the information. It'll help alleviate. So the next part is just customer service. I mean, when you're in maintenance, you're experiencing everybody's worst day. Your toilet's backing up, your air quit working and it's 95 degrees outside. I mean, it's very difficult. Everybody you speak to is typically not happy. They moved into a home, they're paying their rent, they're paying their bills, and then they have something go wrong. So it's just not good when you're speaking to them usually. Some people can be very understanding, but offering them good customer service is important. And part of the customer service is the communication that goes along with that. Even if you don't have any news, it's good to just give updates. You know, I'm still working on this, as long as it's within reason. So we really want to make sure that when a tenant submits a work order, we're touching that work order, addressing the tenant within a reasonable amount of time. I would say within 12 hours, we should be reaching out to that tenant to let them know we've received their work order and we're working on it, and we'll be in touch with them soon for scheduling. That right there says a lot. They just want to know that their work orders are being received, somebody's aware, we've acknowledged, we're working on it as quickly as we can. So then also, sometimes you receive work orders that have been submitted by the tenant. They're very vague. You need more information. A plumber's version of a flooded basement and a tenant's version can be two different things. The tenant could be reporting a flooded basement and it's a puddle, whereas we send a tech out and it could be, 2 inches of water in the basement, or, something along those lines, something that needs an immediate solution to. So requesting photos from the tenants, very, very important to get clarification. So that's one of the things when you receive a work order, is trying to ask as many questions as possible, try to offer troubleshooting advice if you can. And then requesting photos. Just like I said, it helps add clarification. It also helps us be more prepared. It saves us making a trip out to just take a look, make a material list, things like that. If we receive the photos, we can have a better idea of what we need to do to fix it, what materials we need to bring with us, and potentially even like how long it may take to make the repair. So that's very, very important. And then from there, you can go ahead and schedule the work order. I mean, even asking a tenant what their availability is, acknowledging that you've received it, requesting your photos, and then asking about scheduling information, what day and time works best for them, for us to, get in there and make the repair. That also lets us know how urgent the tenant thinks that it is. If they want somebody out there as soon as possible, then they think that it's urgent. So one of the other things that we try to do to streamline our maintenance a little bit is, because we do manage so many properties here, when we receive multiple work orders for the same property, it causes some confusion, it causes duplicates, it causes scheduling issues. So as part of a coordinator for maintenance, reviewing all of the open work orders and then sorting them by the address, so that way we can combine any open work orders per address. A good example of scheduling issues that this causes is, I have several maintenance techs who work as like a general maintenance person. If I receive a maintenance request for a clogged drain, and I also receive a maintenance request for a handrail, I have one person who may be able to make repairs on both of those items. If they're submitted in separate work orders, this may delay the repair. So we definitely try to keep those together and just put everything into one. Another major part of work orders is receiving owner approval. Even though we're the property manager, there are certain decisions that we can't make regarding somebody else's home or property. So what we try to do is, we have a limit. The maintenance limit that we use is $250. Anything that goes over that limit, we then follow up with the owner just to make sure. So we try to give them a description of what the issue is, what we're experiencing, what our techs have observed at the property, and then provide them the labor and materials to make their repair. Again, these are decisions that they should be making as the homeowner, definitely if there are options. For example, I had a property where the tenant was under the impression when they moved in that it had central air. So we provided those options to the owner. We could either, install a window unit for the tenant, we could install central air, and then we kind of gave the pros and cons to each, just based off of our opinions, so that way they could make the best decision, not only for the current tenant, but just the long-term life of the property. So it's things like that. And we're kind of, you know, the middleman for these owners. So we want to be making the best decisions that we possibly can with them in mind, for cost and for the property, for the long-term life of the property. So that's super, super important to do when it comes to maintenance. Tenant chargebacks. I feel when this is part of setting up that tenant expectation up front, if they feel that they're going to be charged back for some of these items, they may not put in the work orders. And I don't want to make it seem like we don't want to make the repairs, that the repairs are needed, but they may be repairs that they hold off on putting in. They're not urgent. And they could also be the ones that are causing the damage. So we do try to charge tenants back when needed. I kind of gave the examples earlier about the HVAC, furnace, air, plumbing, things along those lines. So the items we charge tenants back for is if we get a call for furnace or AC, and we tried to troubleshoot over the phone. We've asked them, have you changed the filter? Have you checked the filter? Have you changed the batteries in the thermostat? And have you checked the breaker box just to make sure that that switch isn't flipped in the off position? If you've checked these items and you still want to move forward with a maintenance request, if we go and send a tech and determine that it's any of these items, you will be charged back. And just depending on the scope of what's needed to make their repair is what we will charge the tenant back for, or how we charge the tenant. When it comes to electrical, now this one's a little bit different because we really don't want tenants messing with their own electrical. So one of the troubleshooting items that we ask is just to find out if the breaker box, maybe something is, the switch is flipped, and whatever it is they're trying to use, to just check that before we send anybody out for an electrical issue. And then for plumbing, plumbing is anything other than tree roots found in the line. So like I kind of went through earlier, I mean, the tree roots, you can't really help if those are growing and that's what's clogging the line. But if it's wipes, sanitary products, children's toys, I mean, we've had some pretty crazy things pulled out of drains in the past. So just, again, letting the tenants know that's what they can expect. Now, if they knew that their children or child threw a toy in the drain and that's why it's clogged, we just tell them you're going to be charged back. You can go ahead and call your own plumber. We can assist in those cases, but just giving the tenant that option as well. They're in more control of what they're being charged in those cases. But again, we just want to make sure it's being handled one way or another. Gutters, something tenants tend to call in. So we clean out gutters while the property is vacant. That could be while it's in the rehab project. It could be while it's in turnover in between tenants. We make sure that that's handled. And then from there, the tenant that moves in is now responsible for those. And then pest control, we do receive calls for pest control, and we also try to place that on the tenant as well if it's a single family home. A lot of times it's a cleanliness issue, which is what's bringing the pest in. So if it's things like mice, ants, things like that, we just, you know, are your living conditions clean? Are you putting food away? Are you making sure that that's happening? And then just directing them to call their own pest control, being that it's a single family home. So those are just items that we charge tenants back for, and missed appointments as well. If we have scheduled with the tenant, we use in our AppFolio system, we're using the text capabilities to schedule. This helps the tenant refer back to text messages, and then also helps us be able to do that. So if you can go in and clearly see that we've scheduled with the tenant, they said they would be available, we've sent a tech out, we've given them the proper notice, and all of that, then and we can still find that they chose not to be there for their appointment, then we will go ahead and charge them back for that as well. It's a missed trip. It's it's a trip charge. It's time that we could have spent working on somebody else's urgent issues. So those are the areas. Part of the tenant follow-up and the tenant communication. So again, this is through AppFolio, the property management system that we're using. We will go through, once a work order has been completed, it will send that to the tenant. And they have an option to take what's called a maintenance survey. In a maintenance survey, it kind of lets us know where we stand, if we've done a good job, if we need to improve. Is it something that we need to address with the tech who is out on the call? It kind of gives us a lot of information from there. And we use that to kind of follow up with tenants. If somebody was unhappy with something that happened, or they said that, you know, things weren't fixed completely, maybe they had an issue with the maintenance technician who showed up there. We just try to review all of those responses and then contact tenants. And if they've left a good score, then we'll contact the tenants and just say, if you think that we've done a good job, you know, go ahead and leave a Google review for us. That can work in our favor. And then if we've not done a good job, then we try to reach out, find out how we can improve, take their feedback, address any issues that maybe weren't addressed, just depending on what that score is and why it was that way. So that's a really helpful tool for us internally to kind of get better at what we're doing here, take the feedback, and grow because of it. So right now we're currently working with a virtual assistant who's coordinating our maintenance. And so we've gone through and done a lot of training, and basically on the areas that I've just gone through. And he is communicating from his location with our tenants and scheduling. What we do, our maintenance staff consists of 5 to 6 maintenance techs, depending on the day and the issue that's being reported. Some of our technicians are skilled in other areas. So once we have filled up the schedule, now a full schedule for us for 5 to 6 maintenance technicians is anywhere between 12 and 15 appointments daily. And then we try to leave kind of some openings in case something urgent has come in the middle of the night or that morning, or basically while our office was closed. It leaves some openings for us to add to the schedule the day of, so that way people can be prepared for that. These are going to be our major issues. We have, you know, of course, emergencies that we want to be reacting to as soon as possible. And we have somebody delegated for on-call as kind of a schedule rotation for who the on-call technician is. And then, of course, we have our major issues. And we schedule based off of skill set, who is good in what areas. So for example, if we have major plumbing that consists of maybe a pipe is leaking. Now there's a leak that is causing just, you know, a drip, or if it's a consistent leak that's going to cause long-term damage, that's going to be the difference in a more urgent call. That's a big part of maintenance, is triaging what work orders are coming in. Is this something that if I don't address it right here, right now, or within the next few hours, is going to be a major issue? Is something that I can, you know, let go overnight because it's okay, or the tenant was able to get the water turned off, or something along those lines? Or is this something where it's affecting the tenant? It may be uncomfortable, but it's not something that we need to get somebody out there tomorrow to take care of. This is something that, you know, a handrail or a door sweep, maybe something along those lines is they've submitted a work order for. We want to get it on the schedule. It's just not something that we would do immediately to allow us to fill the schedule with those immediate concerns. So our virtual assistant has been trained on those procedures and that information, so that way he can be scheduling. with tenants and then adding them to the text schedules. The other thing with maintenance, it kind of goes back to the communication piece, is if we know, watching the weather, we're going to be receiving a lot of rain, or during the winter months, if we know we're getting extremely cold weather, extremely hot weather, we may send out that information to tenants. This will help prepare them, prepare their homes. Maybe they have, when pipes freeze, like those kinds of conditions, we, just give tenants the step-by-steps that we use on our vacant homes to make sure that pipes don't freeze. Opening up the faucet just a very little bit so that water can kind of drip through there, making sure the cabinet doors are open to allow airflow under their sinks and vanities to make sure that pipes aren't freezing. So try to share those tips and tricks with our tenants just to make sure, for one, it helps the property, and it also helps the tenant. We don't want their items being damaged or them to lose use of their major water, electricity, things like that, because we didn't warn them the way that we should have. So that's important as well, just to kind of keep everybody in the loop, keep communication open. If you can't get something immediately done, just letting tenants know that, keeping open communication with your techs and your owners. If you know, for example, if you have a major repair, a tech has gone out and said, I'm really hurt here. Hello. I want to be as soon as save the master race from extinction. Can I talk to you? I mean, no disrespect, but can you please tell me you have an amazingly good reason? Are you there? Okay, so for example, if you have something, a major repair, somebody, a tech has gone out and looked at something that could potentially be a major cost to repair, just keeping that communication open with the owner of the property, just letting them know we've received a work order for this item. We're not 100% sure at this moment in time what the scope of work or the cost for labor and materials is going to be. But we just want to give you a heads up so that you can financially prepare for this, or at least know about it before you hit them with that major repair. So that's just how we try to work things here, is just keeping open communication for sure between everybody. Maintenance is one of the most difficult areas, I feel, in property management, because of all of the areas it affects. And it affects your tenants, it affects your owners. And without those two groups of people, we wouldn't have the property management. So it's super important that we're, like I said, communicating with everybody and making sure everybody's on the same page. So I have basically gone through everything that I wanted to discuss as far as maintenance and any tips and tricks that we use here. If you don't have any questions, I know you just jumped on, maybe you have a question about something specific, I can kind of circle back on a topic.